Hello. The last decade of my life has been a whirlwind. I'm Fred, a 44-year-old entrepreneur, and while most people envy the success I've had with my software company, they rarely understand the cost. My company has made me more money than I ever dreamed possible, but it has also sucked up every ounce of my time, energy, and patience. Unfortunately, the person who made it all worthwhile, my wife, Laura, has turned into someone I barely recognize. Laura and I met when I was just starting out. She was amazing, bright, and had a sense of humor that could brighten the darkest day. We were inseparable back then. She believed in me when I told her about my dreams of building a company from scratch. I promised her that one day we would have it all: freedom, wealth, and lots of time for each other. For a while we did, or so it seemed. But success changes everything. My company grew faster than I could have imagined, and with it came endless hours in the office, constant travel, and pressure to keep everything running smoothly. At first, Laura was supportive. She understood the sacrifices and encouraged me, but as the years passed, the Laura I knew began to fade. At first, it was the little things. She'd get annoyed when I had to cancel plans, or when I took work home. Then she started complaining about how boring our lives were, that we weren't living like the successful couple she saw on Instagram. I'd hear her on the phone with her friends, talking about luxury vacations or designer purchases, and she'd always end with, "I deserve that too." Over time, her comments became more harsh. She'd call me boring, inconsiderate, even robotic. It hurt, but I kept telling myself she was just upset. I was too. I couldn't ignore the way she started treating me. Laura had become cold, dismissive, and worst of all, condescending. The woman who used to bring me coffee during late-night coding sessions now acted like I was just a walking ATM. She demanded expensive jewelry, shopping sprees, and upgrades for her car, all the while mocking my hard work and telling me I should do more for her. The turning point came last week. Laura casually mentioned over dinner that I should consider improving myself. At first, I thought she was talking about work-life balance or my fitness, but then she leaned over and whispered with a smirk, like a man. My stomach twisted. That comment, it wasn't just mean-spirited. It seemed calculated, like a dagger she was waiting to twist. I couldn't sleep that night. Laura had never made comments like that before, at least not so overtly. It wasn't just her arrogance or her selfishness that haunted me. It was the nagging feeling that she was hiding something. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake my suspicions. I started paying closer attention to her late-night yoga sessions, her phone that was always face down, the occasional new pair of underwear that I'd never seen her wear for me. I even noticed that she spent hours on her appearance, more than she used to, especially before going out alone. And then there were the cryptic text messages, short replies and giggles that she brushed off when I asked. I needed answers, but getting them was harder than I expected. Laura was wary. I tried everything, casually asking her about her day, checking her phone when she momentarily left it unattended, even suggesting that we spend more time together. Nothing added up, and she always had an excuse. Yesterday, I hit a new low. I came home early from a client meeting to find Laura in the backyard, talking to someone on the phone. She was laughing, twirling her hair, and pacing. I couldn't hear much, but the tone was different from the way she'd spoken to me. "You're so mean," she said, her voice dripping with flirtatiousness. My chest tightened as I realized she wasn't just talking to a friend. I decided then to get to the bottom of it. I needed proof before I confronted her. That night, while Laura slept, I installed a tracking app on her phone. I wasn't proud of it, but I was desperate. The next day, she was logged at an expensive hotel on the other side of town during her supposed lunch with friends. I drove there, heart pounding, and parked a few blocks away. I saw her car in the lot, but I couldn't bring myself to go inside. Humiliation, anger, pain, all of it hit me at once. I sat there for what felt like hours, waiting and hoping I was wrong. When she finally came out, she wasn't alone. A tall, athletic guy in a suit walked her to her car, put his arm around her, and held the door open as she got in. The next day was the day I decided to seek revenge rather than fight pointlessly. Laura, the woman I had sacrificed everything for, had crossed a line no amount of apology could erase. The worst part wasn't even that I had caught her with her lover in that hotel. It was the realization that she thought I was too blind, too stupid, or too passive to fight back. But I wasn't going to confront her in a fit of rage. That would only give her the upper hand. No, if I was going to destroy her world, I needed to be smart, calculating, and precise. So I called my friend Herman. Herman and I had been together since college. He was a private investigator now. At first, I hesitated, wondering if it was fair to drag him into this. But when I told him what Laura had done, he didn't even let me finish before he said, "Send me the details. I'll handle it." A week later, Herman called me. "Fred," he said, his voice heavy, "it's worse than you thought." He met me at a diner on the outskirts of town, carrying a manila envelope stuffed with evidence. I stared at it, my stomach churning. I thought I was prepared for this, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw. There were photos of Laura and her lover, Ryan, kissing in his car, walking hand in hand into hotels, and leaving restaurants together. But the most heartbreaking piece of evidence was the video, a grainy clip of them making love in Ryan's car, their bodies entwined in a way that made me want to puke. Herman handed me a USB drive with the footage, and I shoved it in my pocket without saying a word. "I didn't want to say this over the phone," Herman added, "but this guy, Ryan, he's married. He's got 2 kids. And you're not going to like this. He works for a competing software company, the one you already contacted." The floor fell out from under me. Not only had Laura betrayed me, but she'd done it to someone who could use her to get inside information about my business. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning with anger, pain, and an emerging plan. This wasn't just about Laura anymore. It was about taking back control of my life. If she and Ryan thought they could humiliate me and get away with it, they were wrong. The first thing I did was freeze Laura's financial accounts. She had access to a joint credit card and a monthly allowance I'd set up on one of my accounts. With a few clicks, I blocked her, gave her a glimpse of what life was like without her personal ATM. Then I created an anonymous email. It included a compilation of the evidence Herman had collected, photos of Laura and Ryan kissing, timestamps from their hotel meeting, and, yes, a short clip from the explicit video. I made sure it was incriminating but not illegal to distribute. Then I sent it to Ryan's wife. Her name was Lisa, and I'd found her social media profile minutes after I'd learned Ryan's last name. The response came almost immediately. My phone vibrated with a response from Lisa. "Who are you?" she wrote. "How do you know that?" I responded, explaining everything. I didn't hide who I was or sugarcoat it. I told her I had more evidence if she wanted it, and that I was sorry she had to find out this way. Lisa responded with a stream of messages, each one angrier than the last. She thanked me, promised to take care of Ryan, and assured me that she would make his life something. Next up was Ryan's professional life. I reached out to an old acquaintance who worked at a competing software company where Ryan worked. We'd had a few beers at industry events, and while we weren't friends, I knew he'd want to hear what I had to say. I sent him another email, this time attaching a video. I made it clear that not only was Ryan having an affair, but he was potentially using his position to steal sensitive information from me through Laura. The consequences were immediate. By the end of the week, Ryan's name had been removed from the company's website, and industry gossip was speculating that he'd been fired for violating company. Laura, of course, had no idea what was going on. She was too busy putting on an act, pretending everything was fine. But when she tried to use our joint credit card at the boutique and was rejected, she came home furious. "Fred," she snapped, walking into the living room with her phone in hand. "What the hell is going on? I was just trying to buy something and it didn't go through." I looked up from my laptop and smiled. "Oh yeah, I froze the account. I thought it was time to reconsider how much access you have to my money." Her face turned red. "You're kidding." "I'm not kidding," I said calmly. "But I'm glad you brought it up. We have something we need to talk about." I pulled out the manila envelope Herman had given me and tossed it on the coffee table. Laura stared at it in confusion until she opened it and saw the pictures. Her expression went from anger to shock to pure panic. "Fred, I can explain," she began. "Don't worry," I interrupted. "I know everything. The hotels, the car, the guy you were hanging out with. Ryan, right? The married guy with kids?" Laura's jaw dropped. How do you know about him? I have a friend who's really good at uncovering the truth, I said. And he gave me enough evidence to ruin your little fairy tale. You thought you could humiliate me, Laura? Now it's your turn. The next few days were chaos. Laura's sister Clara showed up at my house, furious, not at me, but at Laura. Clara had seen the pictures after I'd sent them to a group chat with Laura's family. She apologized profusely, promising she had no idea what her sister was doing. I'll help you, Fred, Clara said. Whatever you need, I'm on your side. With Clara's help, I began spreading the story far and wide. Posts on social media, anonymous tips on blogs that thrived on scandal. Wherever Laura and Ryan turned, there was no escape from the shame. Laura begged me to stop. She cried, pleaded, even accused me of being cruel. You're ruining my life, she screamed one night. I laughed bitterly. You ruined it yourself, Laura. I just want to make sure everyone knows who you really are. By the end, Ryan had lost his job, his wife had filed for divorce, and Laura was left with nothing but a pile of broken dreams. After everything I had been through at the hands of Laura and Ryan, I thought I had seen the worst of their scheming, but I had underestimated how petty and vindictive they could be. Not content with the destruction they had already caused, they decided to drag me to court, demanding a share of my property. Their claim was absurd. Laura was trying to claim that she had contributed to my success, when her contribution was to empty my wallet and undermine my peace of mind. Ryan, as her slimy accomplice, was at her side, hoping to sink his claws into my assets. When I received the subpoena, I felt the familiar wave of anger rising in my chest. But this time, I was not going to let it paralyze me. I had a solid support system, and the first person to speak up was Laura's sister, Clara. Clara was furious when she learned of Laura's affair, and her anger only grew when she saw the lengths her sister would go to ruin my life. I don't care that she's my sister, Clara said one evening as we went over paperwork in preparation for the case. What she's doing is disgusting. I'll help you fight it, Fred. The legal battle was a nightmare. Laura and Ryan's attorney threw everything at me, arguing that Laura was a vital part of my success and that she was entitled to a significant portion of my property. But my legal team, bolstered by Clara's inside knowledge of Laura's habits and behavior, was more than willing to blow their arguments away. Clara proved an invaluable ally. She provided emails and text messages Laura had sent her complaining about how little she cared about my work and how she deserved more. She even testified in court, painting a harsh picture of her sister's entitlement and betrayal. My family rallied around me, too. My parents, who had always been skeptical of Laura's behavior, showed up to every hearing. My cousins and siblings helped gather evidence, providing moral support whenever I felt the weight of the case weighing on me. The trial dragged on for months, but in the end we won. The judge saw through Laura's lies and dismissed her case entirely. Ryan didn't even bother to show up for the final hearing. The night we won, Clara and I went out to celebrate. It wasn't planned. After the verdict, she offered to get a drink, and I was all too happy to refuse. We ended up at a quiet bar downtown, at a table with a bottle of whiskey between us. I still can't believe she thought she could get away with this, Clara said, shaking her head and pouring another drink. She doesn't even know how to use a computer, but she's trying to convince a judge that she contributed to your software company? I laughed, the sound rough and uneven. It's like she doesn't even know me. Or maybe she just doesn't care anymore. Clara reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You deserved better, Fred. You still do. Her words hit me harder than I expected. For so long, I'd been stuck in this cycle of anger and resentment, focusing on everything Laura had done wrong. But here was Clara, someone who'd seen me at my worst, reminding me that Laura's betrayal didn't define me. The whiskey was flowing, and soon we were both drunker than we should have been. The bar was closing, so we piled into a cab and headed back to my place. We laughed all the way home, swapping stories about the courtroom drama and joking about how scared Laura was when she lost. As we walked in, Clara plopped down on my couch and kicked off her heels. You know, she muttered, if you weren't my sister's ex, you'd be dangerous. I raised an eyebrow, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. Dangerous? Yeah, she said, leaning back and giving me a wry smile. Successful, funny, too charming for your own good. That's a recipe for trouble. I laughed nervously, the air between us shifting in a way that was both exciting and terrifying. Maybe it was the alcohol, or maybe it was the months of shared hardships and late-night conversations. But suddenly Clara didn't feel like Laura's sister anymore. She felt like someone who was there for me in a way Laura never was. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were kissing. It was sloppy and impulsive, but it felt natural, like something that had been building for a long time. We ended up in my bedroom, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly connecting with someone. I guess the secret's out. I groaned, running a hand through my hair. It's a mess. Maybe, Clara said, her hand brushing mine, but I don't regret it. I looked at her, surprised by her honesty, and as the chaos of the morning swirled through my mind, we fell back into bed, making out with each other again. Goodbye,